All right, thank you very much. It's nice to be here in the webinar today and to be a part of this panel. So today I'm going to talk about barriers to renewable energy development and ways to overcome them. And in contrast to my colleague Sandeep's presentation, which was focused largely in the urban environment, my work is focused largely in rural areas where a large amount of energy production is located, including increasing renewable energy systems in rural areas. So the results that I'll be sharing with you today from some of our work involves my own work, but also the work of many other people, including my graduate students such as Sonic, Monique, and Andrea, and others who've helped in developing this material. So I hope to move through this fairly quickly and look forward to having an interesting conversation with you as we move through these formal presentations. So just by way of background, I like showing this slide because it illustrates quite nicely the renewable energy potential within the province of Alberta, and in particular, looking at the left map, the wind energy potential. And you can see many of us know that wind power is a big part of the Pincher Creek area in the Rocky Mountains of southwestern Alberta. But you can see from the red areas of this map that there's a fairly significant wind energy potential throughout the southern and the central part of the province. And so there's considerable potential there. And in fact, Alberta has similar geography and size to the country of Germany. And in Alberta, we have approximately 1,000 wind turbines currently in the province, and Germany has something like 30,000 wind turbines, and they have a lower level of wind capacity in Germany than we do here in Alberta. So the potential for wind is incredibly significant here, and we're potentially just getting started with the development and rollout of wind farms across the countryside. Additionally, solar is a big part of the renewable energy resource within the province, again, particularly in the south, but all the way up through and into the Edmonton area. And then geothermal, particularly the hot spots for geothermal in the province are around the Rocky Mountains and the Hinton area, for example, where there's some considerable geothermal potential for electricity production. So that's the context for renewable energy potential within the province. The other thing I'd like to say is that there's some pretty significant differences in terms of scale when we think about renewable energy projects. So with wind power, for example, you can look at on the left a utility scale private energy project called the Hands Hill Wind Project. They've got 29 turbines in this initiative, and that's the fairly well-known utility scale kind of projects that are underway within the province. In contrast to that, there are community scale projects. Many of them are more focused on solar energy production at the community level, but we also see wind at the community level as well. For example, the Box Springs Wind Farm outside of Medicine Hat has 3 turbines, and it's partially owned by the municipality of Medicine Hat. So the scale is certainly a big factor. And in Edmonton, for example, there's quite a wide range of scales even within the city, everything from solar power on people's rooftops to a much larger solar farm that's currently being developed in the River Valley by EPCOR called the E.L. Smith Solar Farm. So scale, I think, is a big part of the conversation when it comes to renewable energy development, particularly the opportunity to develop not only large utility scale projects, but also smaller community scale projects. And the focus of much of my conversation today is on the community scale work. So when we think about renewable energy development, there's certainly incredible opportunity, but we also know that there's an incredible amount of resistance. And so you could just look at headlines from across various newspapers across Alberta to see some of the resistance that's present within the province. And in particular, I like this, this one title called "Wind Power Loses Love in Southern Alberta." And that's an article from the Pincher Creek area, where as wind turbines have been present on the landscape since the early 1990s, one would think that communities would become accustomed to those landscapes, but in fact, there's increasing resistance to wind power development, even within the Pincher Creek region. So there's certainly a lot of challenges ahead in terms of building out renewable energy, particularly as we face the challenges of public resistance to these projects. So that's another piece of the background to my conversation today. So thinking about ways of trying to enhance or foster renewable energy in the province, our group undertook a survey of municipal leaders. So we had 101 municipal leaders from across the province who participated in this survey. And we were trying to seek to understand what encourages municipalities to develop renewable projects. And so that's the focus of the next couple of slides that I wanted to share with you today. And so from this survey, we can see that almost half, 49% of the people that we surveyed were interested in renewable energy development, but 31% said no, and 20% were undecided. So you can see that in this group of respondents, there's a split in terms of people who are interested and not interested. So we wanted to explore that further, looking at the barriers before I get to barriers, I'll talk about motivation. So for those who are interested in developing renewable energy, what are the motivations for doing that? And so this slide gives us a quick sense of those motivations. The highest level motivations are at the top of this figure, and the lower level motivations are at the bottom. So you can see lowering costs, some of these economic considerations, but also capitalizing on funding from federal and provincial programs, being perceived as innovative, also being a big factor for municipalities. You can also see, I think, quite interestingly, that achieving some kind of carbon reduction strategy is lower on the priority list. It's not as high a motivation, which may be a factor in terms of how we talk about renewable energy development. If it's motivated to address climate change, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, that may not be a motivation for municipalities and municipal leaders. There needs to be other considerations in order for municipalities to take on board some of these projects. Looking at barriers, just one slide on barriers, we can see from the survey that economic factors, the costs that are quite high, payback periods that are too long, those are perceived to be major barriers for renewable energy. Also technical and environmental issues, either being too risky, maybe technology not advanced enough, not feasible. And from a planning perspective, other priorities, other critical infrastructure, whether it's roads or schools or other kinds of things that are priorities for communities, or difficulty getting grants and loans are factors that play into this as well. So those are some of the key barriers that municipalities talk about. With regard to some of the solutions that people are looking at to sort of incentivize or enhance renewable energy development, particularly at these smaller scales, the community scale, the idea of community energy has really become more prominent in recent years. And when we talk about community energy projects, these are projects that are designed from the outset to provide more benefits directly to communities, perhaps through some kind of ownership structure where communities can benefit financially, more so than they would from a project that's owned by a private firm. And another dimension of community energy is this participation and engagement, which leads to the design of projects that are more in line with the values and interests of people who are in the community and who would eventually or potentially support the project if they're more engaged. So community energy is certainly a key concept, in this conversation. And when we look at community energy, some of my colleagues have done a survey. They looked at 367 active community energy projects in Canada. And these are the different kinds of ownership structures. So they could be a cooperative, they could be within a trust, an association, a charity, could be direct municipal ownership, Indigenous ownership, or partnerships. So there's quite a wide range of types of community ownership that are out there. And our research group is currently trying to explore some of these and look at the kind of strengths and weaknesses and viability of these types of ownership for renewable energy projects. And in particular, we're currently looking at energy cooperatives in Alberta. And if we look at these cooperatives, you can see that there are quite a few different types. There are more historical cooperatives, such as the Alberta Federation of Rural Electrification Associations. So this is about electricity transmission in rural areas. And these have been around since the 1940s and 1950s. That's how the rural areas were initially electrified. So these electrification associations, transmission is one type of cooperative, but you can also see cooperatives in the consumer and retail space. So you can buy your electricity for your own home through a cooperative like ACE Energy. There's energy production, such as the Bow Valley Green Energy Co-op, which is a very new co-op that is investing in new green energy projects in the Bow Valley region. And then there are investment cooperatives like SPICE that are also a space for incentivizing investment in green energy. So these are the types of vehicles and initiatives that are available to allow for community participation in the energy